everyone, Jason Meyer here with Masterworks, and tonight we've got something a little different lined up. In class we're doing portraits, and this week we started our color studies. So I wanted to go over some color schemes, but more than that I wanted to go over the idea of advancing color and receding color. If you understand that concept, then it doesn't really matter what colors you have. It does to a certain extent, but you have a lot more freedom and you're going to gain ultimate control. A lot of times when people are painting portraits or people, the skin tone will go flat. It won't seem to sing. And the receding color is generally what is lacking, right? You need that receding color in order to make it sing, as well as the shadow and a highlight. So we're going to spend most of the night at the palette tonight, and I'll introduce the palette colors. Then I'm going to introduce the color wheel in general and to these particular colors. And then I'm going to show you certain schemes, color schemes, and show you how we can get advancing and receding colors in those color schemes. It's a tall order, I know, but I thought, hey, let's roll the dice and see if we can do it. Hey, if not, we played in color for half an hour. But I think we can get a lot done in a half an hour if we stay focused and get to it. So let's head right over to the palette and see what we have. All right, so I gotta just realize I'm missing a window here. There we go. Yeah, we see that Janny's here now. We see Susan's here. And Shakti. Thank you guys for being here. Let's see if we can't make this worth your time tonight. I always try to make it worth your time, but see if we can't extra make it worth your time. So before we get started with our colors, I want to just look at the color wheel here. I may have to zoom out a bit. Let's see. There we go. And so we have yellow. The color wheel is basically based on yellow, red, and blue. Okay? With yellow and red, we can mix orange. With red and blue, purple, violet, yellow and blue, we can mix greens. Okay, at the outside of the circle is where the color's really bright, and as we come inside the circle, that's when the color gets dull and will go to completely neutral. Black and white being at neutral. Okay, so if we apply that concept here, well, we have yellow ochre, which is going to be here, cad red light, which is up here, ivory black and titanium white, which is here in the middle. By the way, this is just medium in case the paint is sticky and doesn't want to mix. That'll help the flow. So if we remember this idea and then we think about what we have here, we're going to apply the same ideas here to here. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, it means if we want an orange, we're going to mix our red and our yellow. Okay, and we'll get to an orange. If we want green, well, yellow, and this is acting as our blue, even though it's black, yellow and black will be our green. Now we can adjust the values of these. But for right now, let's just get a general tone up here. And then what's left? Red and black for our purple. So even though we have a very limited palette, we can still think in terms of the entire color wheel. So purple, without adding any white, let's just do red and black. Looks like we might need a little more black, huh? All right, so right now that's looking almost more brown than purple, but once some white goes in there, it'll cool off really quickly. So walking around our color wheel, we have yellow, which is our yellow ochre, orange, which is yellow ochre mixed with our cad red, purple, our cad red mixed with our black, and green, our yellow ochre mixed with our black. So if we think about this portion of the wheel, maybe even a little bit further down, a little richer red, this is going to be advancing colors, generally speaking. And then as we get over here to our cooler greens, down through our blues and then our purples, before we come back up to our reds and oranges, that we want to think of as receding color. Okay, so what does that mean in a painting, and how does that receding color look? Well, since we're doing skin tones, let's think about an orange, a yellow, and a red. It's going to have a good amount of white in it. Now we don't want to go so white that we can't get a good highlight on there. Right, so I want this to maintain a little bit of richness. So to me this is looking like a nice strong color there. Right, which could be kind of a skin tone. So the question is, will a highlight sit on it? And yeah, highlight shows up very nicely. What would the shadow of that look like? Well, if we just took red and yellow, it's not going to quite get us dark enough, is it? So then our only option then is black with this particular palette. So let's add a little bit black. Okay, so now we've got a warm shadow. Relatively warm to relatively cool on the warm side. So for this in-between, number 3, we want that to be our receding color, or what might be called our non-color. Right, I've heard different artists use different names, but to me it's like an exhale, just a we just want to release. Now, why are these considered advancing colors? Well, what happens to this pile as I add that to it? Does this color seem stronger or weaker to your eye? Well, it's stronger, right? Stronger, no doubt about it. But what about yellow? What if we do that with yellow? Right? And even a yellow ochre, which isn't a very strong yellow, it has more pull than that. But a green, even at full tilt here, that green's gonna, look what that green does. You see all this is holding your eye, and can you feel how that releases your eye? What else might release your eye? Well, what about just black, or if we did gray? Right? What if we got a gray in between our dark and our shadow? And now, do you think this is going to make this color weaker or stronger? Weaker. Can you see that? So this would be considered non-color in here. And in order to really make this color shine, it'll never happen by itself. But with a little bit of exhale, of release, of receding color, of non-color, then all of a sudden this can shine. And if you have a receding color and it's still not shining, well, what do? Well, maybe you need to add a little more red or a little more yellow. Right? Because color, especially advancing color, is what people want to see. It's what they pay big money for. But the point is the advancing color is useless, completely useless, without the receding color. So let's see if I can talk about two particular scenarios here in the time that we have left. So today we looked at color studies in class, or I did actually a demo for the color study. And then after class, I was able to clean that up a little bit. And then I did another color study this afternoon. So this was all about, we want to get to his skin tone, which isn't very bright. And we also want to be able to see the red of the hat. So we kept everything else black and gray, but when we had the gray background, it was too weak. So we had to liven that up a little bit. So in order to keep the red special, I just played the yellow up. Right? It's still a very gray yellow. Right? That's yellow ochre. So you can, when we compare it to yellow ochre, you can see how really grayed off and green it is. But without that yellow ochre there, it doesn't necessarily look that grayed off. Okay? So let's talk about this scenario. And then on this scenario, we've got a warm background. Right? He's got the gray hat, but his face is the orange. Now his shirt is red. And then the background, instead of being more of a receding green, it's an orange. But is that a gray orange or a bright orange? Can you see the background, how grayed down it is when we compare it to the brightest orange we can mix? Okay, so let's look and talk about how we do that and what that means. Okay, so maybe with an opposing color, a complement, a green or a blue or something like that, we could go back here. And then what if we did it not with necessarily a complement, but with the same oranges, but just made it weaker? Okay, so this is going to work similarly if you have a blue, if you have a purple, if you have a blue-green. All of those are going to work in the same way. And this is going to work in the same way whether it's a yellow, an orange, or a red you want in the background. Okay? The limiting factor is your foreground. Think about that. In order for background to be background, it has to be weaker than your foreground. Okay. Let's make that happen. Let's make that happen. So let's just say we have skin tones somewhere around here. Let's give us some room here. Move our green over. Excuse us, Mr. Green. We're going to have to take your property by eminent domain. Because we need some gray, and I want the gray right here so it can go in between the shadow and the light. So gray is simply black and white. Now, is that darker than my light? Okay, yeah. And is it lighter than my dark? I would say yeah. So then I can go pure gray, or I could basically go any direction. If I want it monochrome, guess what color I'm going to add to this? I'm going to add an orange, a yellow, or a red. If I want to complement, I can add green or I can add purple. Black is all I have for blue, so that would be pure gray. So why don't we split it up and do half and half? Let's do half of a warm, more of a monochromatic, and then half of a complement over here. So in this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my orange and a little bit at a time I can add it in here. Okay, here we go. Now it's starting to pick up a little color. Okay, so that's a warm neutral, but you still, see how much weaker it is than my light and my shadow. So that'll give way, and that gives the painting a certain feeling because we're going warm, warm, warm in one sense, right? With this warm being the weakest warm. So something like that is happening here. Okay? Warm, warm, warm. Okay, so now what would happen if we took that gray and added just a little yellow, which is going to make it green. But we have green, we can just add a little green. We've already done some pre-mixing here. So that's going to be a weak color. And so when you use the monochromatic, the warm, 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 it definitely creates a mood. Like that's why John seems so, like it's so much sunshine out there. But this can really create mystery. So we're lighter than our dark. And are we darker than our light? Yes, we are. So your eye, when you get that right, is going to want to let go here. Right? It doesn't feel like there's anything to grab onto or to see. And that, my friends, is the secret to color. That gray, receding non-color. And it's usually best to decide what that's going to be and then use it rather than using all of your cools. Right? I'll have a warm advancing color and then a non-color. And my non-color could be warm or it could be cool. But you have to decide what that is and then be consistent through the painting with that. All right, let's look up here and see what we've got. So Katie made it. Hi, Katie. Reenie. Hey, Reenie. Good, good, good. I hope that made sense tonight. And the one with Jay that I sent you, that's a warm. Miss Wendy, our dancing queen. How are you, ma'am? How are you? All right, so I'm basically done tonight. So there's a few minutes. If anybody has a question, go ahead and type the question in. And I think when I do that here, I'm just going to make a couple spheres. And let's see what we can do to demonstrate this idea. Once you kind of get this in your eye and get a feel for it, man, you're just not satisfied with your work until you have a little bit of that in there. Right? It's like seasoning on your food. Man, it can make all the difference. So let's pretend this is skin tone. Right, since we're doing that. In class, doing color studies this week. I had a skin tone like that. So it doesn't have quite as much warmth in it, does it? So maybe a little more black and yellow. Just a little bit of red. How would that look? Or is it going to look better? But they both seem too much, don't they? They both seem too much. So with this one, why don't we put a little black in there? And with this one, why don't we put a little white in there? So black on the red. Starts relaxing it a little bit. Okay, now we're getting into some shadowy stuff. Okay, then let's say, all right, I like this green. I like this green. Let's take some white and some of this. Get it to that right value, that value in between our light and our dark. And now how could we make that a little more harmonious? Well, first of all, there's no white in here, so I'll just take a little bit of this and stick it in there. I'll take just a touch of that and stick it in there. A touch of that and a touch of that and stick it in here. Now let's remix this. Now again, a touch. A touch doesn't mean make it all look the same. It just means say howdy, neighbor. Be friendly. Be neighborly. Can you feel how the edge is getting taken off there? It's just, everything's a little more relaxed. Doesn't feel like a fight's about to break out. Everybody's just relaxing. And then the last question is, will white show up there, a highlight? And you bet you it will. So this could be a scenario that you did a portrait with. And notice here that most of the color's in the shadow. Okay. So that actually, even though it was green, that turned out as pretty warm. We have time to see about a cool green. How would we make a cool green? Okay, so Katie asked, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. So we talked about the oil rub out method with just burnt umber. You don't usually add color. Wasn't that a traditional way to begin? Yes, they did sometimes do that. You can begin that way, but if you do, don't do thick burnt umber, right? It's more staining the canvas. If you do a full rub out like I taught, it's more about exploring the material of paint and practicing getting those soft edges and thin paint and thick paint. And doing that doesn't necessarily prepare the canvas for the next step. So if you want to just stain the canvas with the burnt umber and prep it, do that, but don't use thick paint. But if you're trying to do like just a monochromatic burnt umber to explore the paint, you definitely want to use the thicker paint to get a feel for it. Okay, so it kind of depends on what your intention is with it. But if there's thick paint on there, it's not that you can't paint over it, but until, again, you get it all covered with your color scenario, it's not going to read right at all. So, and that actually goes with even just the plain burnt umber. Traditionally, well, I don't know about traditionally, but it's nice when you start to have a warm and a cool. And then that keeps it from just getting too hot all over. Because the minute you have any cool, add any cool to that rub out, everything's going to just go way haywire and funky looking on you. And so you'll have to bring the whole painting into harmony. All right, I hope that makes sense. So now we're going to do a cooler green here. So let's clean all this up. Okay, so you guys will have to let me know if what I'm doing makes sense or if this is just too fast. It's pretty quick, but I'm hoping with the classes and as we've been talking about our 4 values, we could see it. So what if our shadow was more like that? Let's see what's our skin tone this time. Right, we gotta light it up with a little bit of white. You're welcome, Katie. You're welcome. Katie says thank you. You're very welcome. Yeah, that decide and be consistent. It helps simplify it, and it also looks better. Right? It doesn't look good to have every color. So pick an advancing color and pick a receding color and then build your painting based on that. It's not that you can't add a little this or that later, but for your meat and potatoes, do that. Try it out and see what happens. My experience is when, as I started using less and less color, things started looking more colorful, right? Because the color that was there had impact, had really good impact. Susan says it makes sense, but we'll still be there when I do my painting. Well, we might have to repeat it, but that's, that's why it's good to like each other. All right, let's talk about this green here. I think I'm a couple minutes over. So how would I cool this green off? Well, with a little bit of white, I could do that. So I took my black and yellow, and now I've added a little white to it. Okay, and again, you can see if I look at these three colors, it's a little bit harsh. A little bit harsh. Some sharp words are being exchanged. Can we be a little friendlier? I think so. Why don't we take just a dollop of that and stick that over there? Why don't we take just a dollop of that and stick that in there? And maybe a bit of that. Okay, now let's remix. Oh, and instantly, I hope that the camera's picking that up. But that feels so much better. All right, so now what about this? Well, maybe there's a little bit of that on the very high end, but maybe there's a lot more of that. Do you see how that just, again, took the edge off of it? And then if we had something starting, hard edge here. If we had something stopping, hard edge here. We had the air running between it. What are we missing? You know it, the highlight. Okay, guys, I know that was a lot for a half hour, but I kind of felt like challenging myself because a lot of people are having problems. We'll get this or this, but it'll just look dead. You're missing that non-color, right? And it's distinct and separate from your shadow. By the way, we've been talking about this non-color for a long time. It's our number 3 gray. It's our number 3 gray. Okay, everybody, let's see what we got here. Let's see. Shakti says, this is so important. You have made it visually complex, Mr. A must-see. Well, if it helps, I hope it helps everybody. And the thing is, if it's valuable, prove it. Show me those good paintings. I want to see it in your painting, right? Prove that it's valuable to me by making your paintings go up 1,000%. That's what I'd like to see. All right, we're going to end it there. We're going to have an exciting morning jump start in the morning. We're going to be going back to the students' work and seeing what we can find there for an hour tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody, for letting me run over a couple of minutes. Again, my name's Jason Meyer. This is Masterworks. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give me a thumbs up. A like and a share is awesome. And join me again back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock for Morning Jump Start. Morning Jump Start's 8 a.m. tomorrow. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.